Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another virtual event with Calyptus. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you don't know who we are Web3's gamified hiring platform, helping people all over the world find jobs in the space and supporting some of the very best employers in our industry. Today, we are going to discuss ownership and equity. Is it the way to build loyalty and retention in Web3? Our panelists bring a huge amount of experience leading people and talent teams at some of the most respected employers in our space. And we'll explore how equity and token models are shaping the employer-employee dynamic and whether these mechanisms really do drive loyalty and retention. Let's kick off by hearing from our speakers. Perhaps Ed, if you want to jump in.
Yep, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Ed Snook. I lead people operations and recruiting at Mysten Labs. Mysten Labs is the original contributor to the SWE network.
My name is Jacqueline Finnegan. I'm the head of talent with Injective Labs. I've been with the company for 3 years now. I was their first recruiter there, and before that with Kraken. So in this industry for 7 years now at this stage.
Hi, I'm Ryan Anderson. I'm head of talent at O1 Labs, which is Mina Protocol, and we just launched another new L1 coming up as well too. Project Untitled, if you're interested, but more to come on that. But yeah, I'm an agency recruiter turned internal recruiter. Been playing in the space or Bitcoin space since 2013. I also used to work at Kraken with Jacqueline and Pantera Capital investor in the space, and now I'm at O1 Labs. Yeah.
Amazing. Some serious experience. Cool. Well, let's kick off. I think, in traditional tech, we see a whole load of different models in terms of compensation. In this space specifically, we see equity, tokens, profit sharing models. I suppose, perhaps Ryan, to kick off, what are the most prevalent ownership models in the Web3 space, and what are their respective strengths and challenges?
Yeah, good question. And so we at O1 Labs, we have 3 components, right? And I know various Web3 companies have different models as well too. So for us, it's base salary, equity, and tokens. So for example, for like base salary, we aim to be in the 75th to 90th percentile of San Francisco-based Series B technology companies, and that's no matter where the candidate is based. Because we want to retain top talent. A lot of other, from the investor side, like a lot of VCs like A16Z, Dragonfly, Pantera, Paradigm that are crypto native, like they all like have this kind of range, the 75th to 90th percentile, if not more for some projects, but that's ultimately pretty competitive to compete with like FANG type Web2 companies. Obviously the pros of this, it's predictable and stable income, compete, with top FANG companies or Web2 companies. The cons of it, it doesn't motivate employees to go above and beyond, no commission, that sort of thing. The market can always change in a fast moving space like crypto too, with base salary. For example, there's certain roles in crypto that have rare skill sets, especially with a lot of the layer 2s and COSM, WASM, ZKVM, that things we use Pave as a compensation tool that a lot of times we have to speculate, right? Or just see what they're getting from other companies. So that's definitely a con that, a lot of these don't keep up with that. The equity, the pros of that is skin in the game based compensation. The employees are incentivized to make the company successful. You can also recruit mission-based talent that believes in your company's mission and also aligns your investors and employees to make the company profitable. The cons of that, the secondary markets pre-IPO with dealing with that with a lot of the companies I worked at. And it can be, complex structures as well. It's not immediately liquid. There's tax implications no matter where in the world you are. And the employees take a risk that the company might not find product market fit. Tokens, which is my favorite form of compensation. It's the pros of it's often immediately, I shouldn't say like, there's usually like a 1-year cliff at companies and 4-year vesting, but there are some companies that do less than that, right? But that's starting to gain traction a little bit. So like, for example, like I get Mina tokens, and like if I want, I can go on Kraken, Coinbase, sell them, and of course pay the taxes on that, but it's immediately liquid, right? And there's flexibility in compensation models for the tokens. The cons are, like, if you're a top project, you might attract people there for the wrong reasons. So if you're at like a top 10 token, during the middle of a bull market, recruiting can be a lot easier because you have attention on you, but also, you might just attract people that are there just for the immediate glorification, right? And the instant money. So not mission-based talent. And there's also, for the volatility of bull and bear markets, government uncertainty on regulation, which we're seeing now, and the changes of administrations, at least here in the US. And the taxes can be unclear in many jurisdictions. And of course, there's more advanced things like staking and that sort of thing. But also, if you're really interested in going deep into the tokens, the team over at Dragonfly, like Zach Skelly and Chris Oshing, do a really great job. So highly recommend to read their work.
Can definitely vouch that Zach has a lot to say on the token side of things. Yeah, Jacqueline or Ed, did you have anything to add in particular on either of those topics?
I was just going to say, sorry, go ahead.
No, you first, Jacqueline.
No, I was just going to say, that the token award, while it is a great incentive to attract, but we're talking here about retaining staff, and the problem is that you could be retaining staff for all of the wrong reasons. So it is important to look and see how you've structured that token award. If you've got a very long cliff for a very long time before each payout, you could be holding on for the wrong reasons.
I was going to get back to the ownership model, right? And talking about equity versus tokens. And if you are offering both, Ryan, it sounds like you are doing that. We also do that. Not every company in Web3 offers equity or tokens or both, but let's talk about the both companies. That's a really interesting setup because you are working at a private, venture-backed company, and Ryan, to your point, hopefully there's a liquidity event at some point in the future, but at the same time you are getting tokens which are liquid on a much faster timeline, and so every employee, every candidate, every investor has to kind of live within this dual world of almost immediate liquidity versus delayed gratification, shall we say, right? And so that can lead to some really interesting design choices and decisions and trade-offs that everyone is, going to want to make. And so that complexity gives you a lot of freedom to make a lot of interesting choices and different setups. Jacqueline, to your point, you want to make sure you're structuring it the right way. But gosh, it can get very complex very quickly. And so I think education is paramount for everybody who is potentially getting both equity and token, or even multiple forms of tokens, right?
Definitely. I think with equity, for example, there can be jurisdictional or regulatory reasons why it's more challenging to offer. I'm not sure, Ryan, whether O1 are based primarily in the US. So you kind of deal with one jurisdiction and everyone's on the same model. But as soon as you have a fully globally distributed team, the equity side of things can be really challenging. That's not also to say that tokens don't come with their own regulatory challenges. But yeah, lots of really interesting points made there. I guess moving on, how does offering ownership, whether through equity or tokens, shape the traditional employer-employee dynamic in Web3? Is it a true game changer in terms of building long-term loyalty, or is it just one piece of the puzzle? And perhaps, Jacqueline, start with you.
Yeah, it is. it is a piece of the I would say it's just a piece of the puzzle, a very big piece of the puzzle for sure. But it certainly does change that dynamic, because when you look at Web 2 versus Web 3, in a Web 2 company, your salary is pretty much fixed. And every year you might get an increase of 2%. Whereas in Web 3, when you've got a token award, your financial reward is really based on the company's performance. So that automatically creates a different dynamic between the employer and employee. And when you think about it, when somebody has ownership of a company, if somebody owns a company, you think of those characteristics that an owner has. And an owner is somebody who, they want the company to succeed. They're highly motivated. If they get a call at 5:05 about a hack, they're not going to say, sorry, I finished work 5 minutes ago. Sorry, I'll help you tomorrow. Somebody with that who has an ownership in the company is highly motivated for the companies to succeed. So you're creating kind of a partnership with the employer and the employee. And you also see that enthusiasm and that energy. And I have to say, in Injective Labs, even though we are distributed, and we all have but we use Slack obviously as a means of communication. But even through Slack, you can see that energy and that enthusiasm comes through, because everybody's everybody's talking about what competitors are doing. Everybody's talking about the industry. And that's not really the norm in traditional models. So you can certainly see now, on the upside or on the flip side to that, the employer also has a responsibility. And that responsibility is to actually listen to those ideas. Because at the end of the day, people are people. And it doesn't really matter what your token award is, but you have to feel that the work that you're doing is meaningful. You have to feel valued, and you have to feel appreciated if you're going to stay and start working the weekend. So if all of those other things aren't in place, it doesn't really matter how good your token award is. And in fact, as I kind of alluded to earlier, if you've got a great token award, you might be retaining people for the wrong reasons if you don't have everything else in place.
Great point. Ryan, you came off mute, I think.
Yeah, I agree with Jacqueline. Like a lot of our employees, are mission dedicated. I know that sounds kind of cliche a little bit, but like our project is a zero knowledge project, and really, protecting people's data and that sort of thing, right? Like, we tend to attract talent that is mission based, but the token is a nice incentive. We never had like anybody really leave, not to my knowledge, that like most people when they leave, we partner with them when they leave. They start companies in the zero knowledge space. That's tend to be most of our when we have people leave. But the token variables, we try to adjust for market compensation or factors. Like, for example, we used to have like during the bear market, like you could take like a minimal price when you signed, right? Like a 30-day average. We've played with that a little bit, and also, with this new layer one that we have, we're putting that into our compensation model as well too. So it's just definitely not a one size fits all solution for all companies. And it depends like where you're at as well too, right? Where your token's at, and like to Jacqueline's point, if you're just there for the base salary, you're in the wrong industry, right? Like, there's a lot of upside because we're just getting started here, right? So yeah.
I would add, from our recruiting team perspective, right? If you have the ability to offer somebody a base salary and equity and token or tokens on top of that, like, that's at least three levers that you have. And as a recruiter, I want all the levers that I can get, right, in order to dial things up and dial things down and be flexible and make a really compelling offer to this top talent that we were trying to pull into the organization. As Jacqueline started off with this, like, what happens next is super important, and making sure that people are aligned. And Ryan, you touched on this as well, being like mission oriented. That is super important for making sure that people are there for the long haul. But again, I love the flexibility that we have in Web3 when it comes to compensation packages overall.
Absolutely. I was gonna pose a question, and hopefully one of you will be happy to answer. I guess with the kind of tumultuous nature of this industry, and I think you've all been in the industry for a long time now and seen multiple cycles. In terms of when you're offering a token as part of a compensation package, do you tend to anchor that to a US dollar price point, i.e. you get a US dollar amount every year, or is it a pure token amount each year? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and try to answer that. So like I was saying with our lock-in, right? Like, so let's say, you know, the challenge with this industry is things are very volatile through bull and bear markets, right? Like, we used to have a model where, like, let's say if you sign today, I don't know the price of Mina right now, it's probably like 50 cents or something like that, right? It's been as high as $1.50, right? So that's a big, you know, switch in things. So like we would take like a 30-day rolling average of the Mina token price, and then you would get like that lock, but you don't get the upside. Does that make sense? Where, you know, like let's say if you signed today and it was 50 cents, like you could get like locked into that price in your vest, versus, but you wouldn't get the upside, right? So if it went to $10 or something and we really mooned, you wouldn't get that upside. So that way it kind of like protects you in from the time you sign. But like that's a whole, you know, pros and cons of that as well too.
I want to jump in, if I may, on this, because we definitely face this. We usually use dollar-denominated grants, and I've seen, you know, a 30-day look back, 90-day. I've seen as long as 6-month look backs to really kind of smooth out the volatility in pricing. Another thing that you can do is, how long is this grant going to run for? Is it for 4 years and you are converting X dollars worth of tokens into a number of tokens using a conversion price, and that's the one price that you were using for that entire 4-year run? Or are you actually splitting that grant and you have 4 1-year grants and you're going to, you know, recalculate it every year? And if you have a token that is really like new to market and you don't have accurate pricing data, there's nothing saying that you can't just give a number of tokens, which we have seen before as well. So it kind of depends on, you know, how mature your product is and how much volatility there is in the market, I feel. But long story short, we try to use dollar-denominated grants where we can.
Yeah, and we'd be the same. We would we're playing around, but really what we're using is the dollar amount as well, and we usually use the 30-day average price as well. But like what Ryan had just said, that does come with its challenges, because, you know, if somebody joins at the top of the bull market and somebody joins at the bottom, they're getting a very different token award. So yeah, it definitely needs flexibility, and it definitely needs, it's not set in stone.
Cool. Really interesting. Yeah, I've seen both models, token and USD amount, and it's good to get your perspective. Cool. Next question. And we've already kind of covered a little bit around the challenges of implementing ownership programs in this space. What challenges do companies face when distributing tokens or equity? How can you avoid potential pitfalls like regulatory risks, misaligned incentives, inequity? And Ed, we'll throw over to you for that.
Sure. So this comes back to maybe the first or second question. It's complicated, right? It's complex. Regulatory environment continues to change. It's different in every country. Taxes, well, I mean, taxes, good luck with everything crypto and taxes in each jurisdiction that you're operating in for both the company and the employees. And so having that kind of a setup gives you flexibility, but you really, really, really need to stay on top of things, make sure that you are educated as an operator, as a legal team, and that you are educating your employees for really what they're getting into, and the trade-offs that the company has decided to make as we set up this complicated compensation structure. Jacqueline, you just touched on if somebody joins at the top of a bull market versus in a bear market, and over time those grants can have very, very different aggregate values to them, essentially, right? So you got to look at things like a vesting duration, and is it a 30-day or a 90-day or a 6-month look back? There are different things that you can do, and all of these decisions and flexibility that you have as a company. I think what you don't want to do, talking about vesting schedules or look back periods specifically, is you don't want to change your mind and do something different every 6 months based on market conditions. And I think that's really tough. Like, let's be clear. Let's be honest with ourselves that when the market has like a bad month, it's going to make you think about wanting to do something different, right? But the pain of implementing that and the whiplash with your employee base, and if it recovers in a month, like, what are you going to do? You're going to change it again? You have to, I think, hold true to whatever it is that you're putting in place, and try not to change it too often, because it's just going to create chaos.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sticking to a well thought through decision, and then perhaps revisiting down the line, but not too often. Jacqueline, anything to add there?
No, actually.
No problem. Ryan? Shall I ask?
No.
Cool. I suppose next question then. In globally distributed teams, fractional ownership often comes up through token or profit sharing models. Do you think that these models offer a deeper sense of belonging and accountability within your teams? And do you have examples of when this has specifically succeeded or failed? Jacqueline?
Yeah, I think it's very important to create a sense creating a sense of belonging, because it is very difficult to do that when you've got when you're in a distributed team and most people are working from their bedrooms. It's very difficult to have this sense of belonging. So it certainly is one step of the way. When there's ownership involved, when there's shared ownership, it gives a shared responsibility to the success of the company. And there is a reason why WAGMI was adopted by the crypto community, and I think it perfectly describes that sense of belonging. But I think another nice way of doing it is maybe offering more tokens as based on somebody's performance. I think it's rather than just focusing purely on the token award itself at the initial stage. I think that could be another nice way to do it. But when it comes to belonging, it is just part of the puzzle. It also comes down to those retreats where people meet and where they actually work together and where they socialize together, and also the events where you're putting on that t-shirt and you're introducing yourself as part of that company. I think all of these things together will foster that sense of belonging. But I don't think if you were working for a traditional company and you were representing the company at an event, you'd feel the same sense of belonging that you do when you have ownership of the company. It brings with it a sense of pride, kind of pride with you've got that name behind you. So yeah, I think it certainly does foster the belonging. But like just offering tokens in general, it's not a silver bullet.
Cool. Yeah, definitely agree. And I like the idea of offering kind of performance-based bonuses in tokens and incentivizing even further through something that is quite unique to crypto, which is the token element of this compensation. Ed or Ryan, did you have anything to add there?
So I wanted to add a little bit the idea of ownership and the impact that you can have, right? So I worked at Google once upon a time, and I got Google stock, and it was worth X, and the market improved and it was worth more than that or whatever, right? And yeah, that's great. It was one of roughly 200,000 employees. Did I do that? Did I have any part in that stock appreciation? No, I did not. Web3 projects and teams tend to be low headcount, like small number of people who are really driving the adoption of blockchain and other technologies, related to Web3. And so I think there is a clear link to say the work that I do is impactful, and I want these tokens, and I want to do a good job, and I want to stay here because I think the value of those tokens is going to increase over time, and I'm going to be part of that somehow, some way. And the work that I'm doing has meaning, right? And more specifically, one thing that we do at Mysten Labs, which I love, is for some token grants, we will do custom letters for people to say like what, and the why is important, right? It's not just your annual refresh. Those are important too, don't get me wrong. But being able to give someone a letter, it's like, hey, we are giving you this award because of the work you did in XYZ, and here's your department leader who's writing a nice message for you as well. I don't want people to underestimate the value of doing something like that because it's large.
I would add to Jacqueline's point, besides token compensation, we do 3 retreats a year, right? So usually one around DevCon. So we just got back from Bangkok, right? And then that's a good way to foster in besides tokens. Also, we have an employee governed board, so no VCs are on our board. We're kind of in a unique situation where one of the founders of our project is a very big idealist. So he believes everybody should have a voice, and so you can run for the board after a year of service with us. And also we're very niche in the ZK community, so we have our employees attend ZK Hack and ZK Summit, which are just so that's a way of fostering a community. Of course, the tokens are there, right? And we do give refreshers, to Ed's point. We do that as well. We have reviews every 6 months, and we want to keep and retain good talent. So that's the way and we're always updating our compensation philosophy at least once a year to be competitive with other projects and see what's out there. And we're Dragonfly is one of our investors, and Zach and Chris they advise us, as well too, and how to do that. And we partner with a lot. Paradigm 2, they kind of guide us a little bit. So so that's a little bit of our ownership structure, which tokens is one part of it, right? And there's non-financial things too that our developers seem to really like. Yeah.
Cool. When can we see you on the board, Ryan?
I think that's covered by my colleague, the head of people. So we have anybody can run, but it's a lot of work too, though. So
yeah, not for everyone. And Ed, to your point, I'm sure you did have a big impact at Google. Maybe a few billion in market cap. But I think your point does stand. The teams are much smaller in this space, and therefore, naturally, the impact that one person can make is generally going to be much higher. So yeah, thanks all for contribution there. Jacqueline, coming back to you again. Briefly, I think on governance tokens and granting employees a voice in decision making at companies. Can this specific practice foster loyalty and engagement, or, in your opinion, does it risk governance fatigue? Is there a balance to strike there, I suppose, is the question.
I think it's very ideological. I think it sounds like a very fair way to do things. But I think, to your point, I think it does. I think it does create governance fatigue. How many times are you going to have to vote? How many times are you going to have to vote? You're not going to know if somebody has or they hasn't voted, or who has or who hasn't. And at the end of the day, I think if the company is collaborating, as everybody's in teams together, if everybody's decision is already listened to, if everybody's voice is heard, I think if the company is collaborating together, I think it makes more sense from a company process point of view, not to use governance tokens for every single decision that the company is going to make. I think it could be a very long process. And like you said, I think after a while, people would start bowing out.
Definitely agree there. And I think if you're going to be voting on something, then there's an expectation that you know lots about that thing.
Exactly.
So it creates a lot of work for people that perhaps aren't involved even in that side of the business. So having, I agree with you, really. Ed, Ryan, anything you would add on that one?
I've seen, governance tokens sound very utopian and idealistic, right? In a perfect world, and without mentioning projects or anything, we've seen cases where that's not so the case, right? Like with a lot of decisions being made, or it's a good idea in theory, but executing is very complex. So I would just warn or just be skeptical. Doesn't hurt to be skeptical in our space, but it has good implications. But is that a reality where everyone has a voice through there? So I don't know the answer, but I'm kind of skeptical of that a little bit. So yeah.
Cool. Again, agree. Ed, perhaps over to you. I think attitudes towards equity and ownership vary across cultures and generations. I recently read a study by PwC, I think, that was talking about young people preferring ownership over base, so whether that be equity or tokens. In fact, it was kind of talking more about tokens, I think. But how can Web3 organizations approach ownership distribution to address those cultural and generational differences and try to ensure inclusivity and engagement?
Yeah, so this is a fascinating topic for me. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of being able to work in multiple organizations, multiple industries, and multiple countries, right? And there's a stark difference with how people view incentives, in the broadest sense of the word, right? And when you get right down to things like equity and tokens, you see with stock compensation, there are certain cultures, generations who, for various reasons, will favor one over the other. Now, as an HR leader, I want everyone to be incentivized in the exact same way, right? I want everyone to want to be an owner, right? I want people to dial up, tokens and equity and whatever we can because you believe in the mission, like all of these things. But as a pragmatist and as a realist, I recognize that there are going to be nuances, there are going to be differences, and sometimes they're cultural, based on geography or generation. Sometimes it's influenced by taxation, right, or other governmental structures. So this one's a hard one to kind of rectify when I'm trying to design a global incentive program. And again, most Web3 teams are small, but generally very, very geographically dispersed, right? And so I think the best thing that you can do is recognize that, again, getting back to candidates, and when you're negotiating, someone's like, yeah, well, I want more equity or I want more tokens, right? The percent or the amount extra that they want, could vary by jurisdiction based on all the factors that we just talked about, right? Or maybe they don't even try to negotiate it for all because it's not that big of a draw for them. And I think that's something that we need to educate people about, but also understand that there are limits to what you can and probably should be pushing for as you're looking at a global talent population with different motivating factors.
For sure. Yeah, I think my takeaway there, really difficult to build an incentivization program fully globally. Everyone's going to be thinking and feeling different things. Jacqueline, you came off mute.
Did I? Yeah. No, I think this is a really difficult one, is like you just said, to try and address. I think it's going to require a lot of, like total rewards when you're looking at not just the token award, but when you're looking at total rewards in general, it's always going to be, everybody's is incentivized differently. So I think there's going to have to be some flexibility, but I think it's nice for employers when an employee comes up and says, hey, give me a lower salary and more tokens. I mean, I think I love to see when people do that. I love to see that. It obviously demonstrates that they're going to put a lot of effort in. So I think that's nice, but it is a difficult one to address because, like you said, everybody, regardless of culture, regardless of age, has got different ideas on what's going to work for them.
I want to ask a related question on this, which you just touched on, if that's okay, Jacqueline, which is, do you let people trade like tokens for cash when you are giving them offers?
We have done, yeah. If somebody would like to say, hey, don't give me any money, don't give me any fiat, just give me tokens, we can do that too.
Cool.
This is my soapbox. I'm actually not a fan of doing that because I think some people need that fiat for student loans, ailing grandparents, you name it, right? And I think that if you don't do it correctly, you can get into trouble, with inequality over time. And also, frankly, it's really hard to track over time, like who made that trade-off and why, right? But yeah. I'll get off the soapbox.
No, I think I see where you're coming from, but I think if somebody themselves decide that's what it's obviously not us deciding, hey, we're going to give you a low salary. It's the candidate themselves who are deciding if they would like to do that. And it doesn't happen very often. It rarely happens. But I think it's a very positive thing when you see a candidate looking for less base salary and more. It's a bit like a salesperson. Hey, don't give me a base salary. Give me a great token award. Give me a great bonus. I mean, that's a real sign of a good salesperson. You know that they're going to put in the effort. So I kind of see it in similarly.
100% commission, please. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I'm probably the only person on this call that doesn't have a token coming with Calyptus, but we definitely offer a sliding scale of equity and base salary. And naturally, for any small business, we love it when people say they want more equity and less base, simply due to, I suppose, the motivation that shows they have. But yeah, I can see, Ed, where you're coming from as well, and some level of fiat compensation probably does make sense at some point. Ryan, was there anything you wanted to add there, or shall we move on?
Yeah, just real quickly. I mean, we'll if someone's trying to negotiate an offer, we'll try to give them more tokens if we can versus base salary, right? So skin in the game is big with us. So and there are some people, at least in my experience, I mean, Jacqueline worked at Kraken with me. We had people in customer service that were, Bitcoin millionaires, right? And they wanted less hours or less, they didn't want the duties that came with a high base salary, if that makes sense, right? So there's people that they just wanted to work in the industry because they're fans or they like helping people learn crypto, Bitcoin, whatever, So it's probably rare, but I don't know. There are people like that, or there's a lot of ex-founders. Maybe they started a company, it failed for whatever reason, couldn't find product market fit, and they'll say, give me the equity, right? Like, I mean, you start a company for equity, right, or token or whatever, but hardly the base salary that a VC would give them, right? But yeah, so that is not the norm, but it does happen occasionally. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. And then a final question that we have planned, and then we'll come to the audience for a couple of questions, I think. And Ryan, I'm going to come straight to you on this. And this is something that's actually really interesting for me. With the rise of remote work, gig economies, contributor models in Web3, how should the concept of ownership evolve? Are we moving towards a broader definition of equity that includes contributors and non-traditional workers? And do you think there are any particular implications of that shift?
Yeah, to my earlier point, about our employee governed board, like a lot of the stuff we have, if you went to like O1 Labs website, you could see our values there. Like, we're all owners is one of our values. And that's not just the token and equity component, right? Like it's everything. We have meetings, full transparency. We go over our budget, runway, things like that, right? So the ownership part includes everything, right? Like, not just the financial rewards, right? Like, what's happening with the company? What are we planning? And it's just very unique, but I think that is the future of a lot of these Web3 projects, where people are engaged fully. They're all owners, like, right, of the project, besides just having a title of CEO or C-level, right? And yeah, so we're like, we have bi-weekly meetings where we just go over and people can ask any question of our CEO and other people at the company. So I hope that answers the question. I can dig deeper, but yeah, if there's anything particular you want to know about that. Yeah.
I wonder if anyone else has anything to add there. I certainly have a couple of thoughts, but Jacqueline.
Yeah, I love the idea of a contractor, or somebody on a short-term contract, getting some, as Ryan would say, skin in the game as well. A traditional contractor is given a piece of work to do, get the work done, may not give it the same effort they would if they have a little piece of the if they have some tokens. Yeah, I think it can go a long way to giving 100% or giving 110% if there's a contractor there that's going to get a token award as well. I like the idea of it.
I'm not sure if this is something that has really, really changed all that much. I mean, startups have always had advisors and folks in their orbit helping them out, formally, informally, and traditionally have, in some cases, gotten equity, right, for that. And instead of equity, or maybe in addition to giving them equity in the Web3 project, you are able to give them tokens, right? Which, as we've talked about, typically has a faster path to liquidity. Is that more attractive? Maybe, maybe not, right? Depends on your each of those person's motivations, right, in terms of that. But I would go back to the same thing of like having another lever, and if you're able to offer different things to folks, then sure, go for it. And by folks, I mean a broad spectrum of like employees, contractor, advisor, whatever it is, right?
For sure. I think interestingly, we're starting to see private platforms pop up for individual contributors that want to just get involved in a small thing with Mina protocol, for example, and contribute and then get paid in tokens. And I think, Jacqueline, you're bang on. In my mind, tokens are a better incentivization method for that because they are liquid. And that leaves it up to the contributor themselves to decide, am I going to cash this in now? Is the work I've done and the people I've been exposed to so good that I'm actually going to hold on to this, and this is, I'll reap the benefits down the line. I think, that actually Gitcoin, I think the DAO have done some work here. Bankless, I know, offer contributions from their DAO, offer contributors to their DAO token awards. So it's definitely beginning to happen in some way, shape, or form, and it'll be interesting to follow that over the coming months and years. Anything final from you guys before we jump to a couple of audience questions?
I just want to say that, in keeping with the title of this today, that token award is a great way for to retain staff, but it's not the silver bullet, and there's a lot of other factors to consider. When you're looking at your retention strategy.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's my takeaway. That very first question, is it the silver bullet? No, it's not. It's a part of the puzzle. And I think Daniel's asked this question on YouTube, it looks like. Thank you, Daniel. We've covered this to some extent, so perhaps if we do a brief overview, but how does ownership and equity models impact employee motivation and engagement? Ed, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so reverse chronological order, Ryan was just talking about this, right? It's in your values, right? That you are an owner and you will see things like insights into budget and runway. So I think that's a really important point to keep in mind. Like, the fact that you're getting tokens and or equity, like, okay, there's a financial component to it, but what else, what does that mean exactly, right? And for O1 Labs, it means, well, what I just said, parroting what you just said, Ryan, this is a core value, you're getting access to information that is quite sensitive, right? But we're giving it to you because you are an owner. And then Jacqueline and I also earlier in the talk, were talking about how it can give you a sense of belonging, right? It can make you want to go the extra mile potentially. So these are all things that are important to keep in mind.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Great. I think that could be all the questions answered. Just looking over here. Yeah, I think we're good to go. Thank you all so much for joining and watching. Thank you very much to the panelists for all your wisdom today. It's very much appreciated. And yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your Thursday. Goodbye.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Thanks all.